Sony is making a major deal with From Software's parent company Kadokawa. So what's been happening is that Kadokawa reached out to Sony in an attempt to try and buy the company off because they were under attack by a South Korean sort of mega conglomerate or whatever have you. And so Sony did respond in kind, saying that that Sony does have some interest in wanting to get a hold of Kadokawa, because Sony wants to get Kadokawa for the anime and manga licensing or whatever. And under Sony, we have PlayStation, who would very much be very interested in From Software, which is one of the biggest developers pretty much of all time at this point. I feel like you can kind of argue even more so than like, a Naughty Dog or whatever, kind of falls in that similar area. So pretty much what ended up happening is that Sony has invested $318 million to acquire over 12 million shares of From Software's parent company Kadokawa, which will increase Sony's ownership of Kadokawa to 10% and making it the largest stakeholder, which is probably the most important thing. And Sony and Kadokawa have formed an alliance to expand their IPs on a global scale. So what does that global scale mean? Well, this Game Rant article actually does a really, really good job of explaining it, and it's by Viraj Bhatnagar. But pretty much what's explained here is that, so Sony will invest 50 billion yen to acquire 12 million Kadokawa shares, which will increase to 10%, so we've already mentioned that. And starting January 7th, 2025, so that's next year, Sony will be Kadokawa's largest shareholder and will extend help of IPs to a global audience. Sony may also lend a hand in publishing Kadokawa's games, which is very important because Kadokawa does have a lot of sort of anime games as well, and we do see a lot of anime games come to PlayStation. It's just that ever since the censorship debacle that happened back in 2018, if you want to start a little bit earlier, on the PlayStation side, where PlayStation weren't allowing games to be released on their platforms, even though the ratings board for Japan, Europe, North America allowed these games to exist, that they got their, Zero D or Zero Z rating, or in PEGI, a PEGI 18 rating, or an M rating with the ESRB. PlayStation did not allow some of these games to release on PlayStation for some reason, and I'm still mad and very angry at that. The one that I look at is Omega Labyrinth Z. That game got cancelled, was supposed to come out in 2016 on PlayStation in the West, PS4 on the West, but it only currently exists on PS Vita and PS4 only in Japan. So it's still available on PlayStation, but you do need to understand Japanese to play the game, which luckily I happen to fall into. But it's just one such example of like how PlayStation has been leaning heavily on censorship and things like that, which still makes me pretty mad. But yeah, looking at this even further, alongside the acquisition of shares, Kadokawa and Sony have formed a strategic capital and business alliance. The motive behind this collaboration is to extend the global reach of Kadokawa's massive roster of IPs, of which they have a lot. I feel like they have lent themselves a lot to card games like Weiss Schwarz and whatever have you. In addition to co-producing anime products, Sony can leverage its established movie and TV subsidiaries by adapting Kadokawa's IPs into live-action films and TV shows, which live actions, giant red flag, just wanted to say. Interestingly, the press release also mentioned Sony further expanding the publishing of Kadokawa's games, which will most likely involve the PlayStation division, and of course it will. It's most likely going to be treated as if though it was a first-party title, because I can't imagine it being treated second party, because second party technically doesn't exist, we just see it that way. So the differences between first party is the publisher owns the studio and the IP. Second party is that the studio is not owned by the publisher, but the publisher is publishing the game anyways. And third party is that the publisher does not own the studio. Second party is, second party is publisher does not own studio, but they own IP. If they don't own studio or IP, that's third party, usually. But anyway, that's just kind of differentiating a few terms that used to be used in the gaming space probably about 10 or so years ago. But technically, second party doesn't exist. It's only the first or third, because that's how the IP is sort of considered. But yeah, it's cool that, you know, Sony is not going to own Kadokawa completely, so they don't have this massive anime and manga monopoly. But with that being said, however, it does make me wonder if that South Korean conglomerate is still going to go after Kadokawa. I sure hope not, trying to do like a hostile takeover, but you know, we won't know until it happens or they try to do it. So until then, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Hopefully this is actually going to be, you know, something of a bright future for them at Kadokawa. But again, it's really just difficult to tell until we, you know, sit down, wait for time to pass by and see actually what happens. With all that being said, however, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of next year. And with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.